Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Vox Vomitus, otherwise known as Word Vomit. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of the award-winning novel Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, as well as the Victorian horror novels of the Hotel series. I have a soon-to-be-released novel coming out in July called Pretty Ugly, and I am joined once again, as always, by my Vox Vomitus vixen, Allison Martine, author of the Bourbon books and her cocktail, and her signature cocktail with her right now. We are thrilled to have with us today Cynthia Pelayo, author of Children of Chicago, as well as Into the Forest and All the Way Through. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you for having me. Hello. Hi.
Hello. Can you tell our viewers and our listeners who are listening later on a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your new book, which is on its third printing, everybody? Very exciting, of Children of Chicago.
So a little bit about me. I am a Chicago-based author and poet. I write very often in the horror space, but I like to say that I straddle genres. I love genre bending, so I am, I think, an experimental writer as well. I've written quite a few books right now. As of now, I was trying to count. So it's great that things have been. I've been steadily writing. I've written Santa Muerte, The Missing, which were my two first YA horror novels. I wrote Poems of My Night, which was published with Raw Dog Screaming Press. I've also written La Teoria, which is my short story collection, which I'm trying to re-release. Into the Forest and All the Way Through, which is a Bram Stoker nominated poetry collection. And then today I just discovered it's an Elgin Award nominated collection as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Which is nice because Poems of My Night was also an Elgin Award nominee, so they can sit together as Elgin nominees. And then Children of Chicago is my adult horror mystery debut. I mean, it's hard to give a genre to it, but it's a genre blend of mystery, horror, thriller, police procedural. So it is my adult debut. It takes place in modern day Chicago. And it is an adaptation or my own retelling of the Pied Piper fairy tale, where we follow Detective Lauren Medina as she investigates a string of murders, children killing children in the inner city of Chicago. And she starts seeing some very familiar graffiti that harkens back to the murder of her sister. And so she might know more about the Pied Piper than we think that she knows. And it's overall a commentary on fairy tales and how horrible fairy tales were to children and to the real mother, and juxtaposing that, or comparing that with modern day Chicago, with the deaths of many children, the increase in violence, actually steady, because you can say crime is picked up, but I think it's more consistent even. So when I grew up I saw in the city. I live in inner city Chicago, so it's a commentary on inner city youth violence, on fairy tales. I try to make the argument that Chicago is a very dark fairy tale city, and a commentary on who you can trust in terms of people in position of authority. Are they there to trust? Are they there to help you, or something worse?
I just want to say, Allison and I we devoured this book this week. So all week we were like messaging each other, like, which part are you at? Don't tell me because I might not be there yet. What page are you on? I'm on this page. So we both finished it last night. So spent today just kind of buddy chatting about the book, and we loved it. And when your publicist pitched it to our show, they just said it's a retelling of the Pied Piper fairy tale, except with crime. Yeah. I mean, they said it better than that. And I went, sold. That's what I want on our show. And I was talking about the book to somebody else recently, and they said, well, what genre is it? And I said, it's crime. It's fairy tales. It has a touch of horror and a history of Chicago. But it's also written in like a lyrical, poetic style.
Yes.
So, which I love. I'm like, that checked off all my boxes right there. I'm like, crime, yes. Fairy tale, yes. Poetry, yes. Like, I wanted all of it.
Right. And so, it's funny because somebody asked me one time, they're like, what genre is it? And I just said, yes.
It's all the genres.
Yes, that's always a good answer. Well, and I think you said earlier something about being like an experimental writer, and I think there's definitely elements of speculative fiction in here. And sometimes speculative is the catch-all for I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, and that's definitely like a good conversation. I mean, I have a MFA from the School of the Art Institute in Chicago, and at the time when I was getting my MFA in writing, and I don't know what it's like now. This was 10 years ago, but genre was like a dirty word. It was like we don't ever bring it up. It's so we are writers and so high art, and so there was a lot of shunning of genre, which that was heartbreaking for me because I wanted to study genre and understand. And then I wound up being paired. Both of my graduate advisors, one was a playwright and one was a very experimental writer who loved fairy tales, and I took a lot of courses. So in my MFA, my focus was on the traditional mystery, like historical, going back to Poe and learning how he created the detective and how that character has morphed over time, and fairy tales. And so I took a lot of the experimental things that I've learned over the years, and I've been applying that in my work. So I do write in the horror space, but I think it's my stories aren't a traditional narrative where you're going to start off and your character is going to change and they're going to
grow and
emotionally
emotionally propel themselves forward. Yeah,
it's going to end and everybody's going to hug and kiss and you're going to go off into the sunset. And it's like, I think of the original like Cinderella. I think the last line in the original Cinderella was, and the crows pecked the sister's eyes. And I was like, that's not like who's it a happy ending for? And
yeah, no, that's definitely like that's definitely like the Sondheim version versus the Disney version of things. Where people are going to have their toes chopped off and eyes pecked out. This is not right off into the sunset time. No.
And so it's ultimately a fairy tale because when you think of the Grimm's fairy tales, there's so many that end pretty badly for people.
Yeah.
And then it's also a Greek tragedy because if you you'll see that there's a connection to a Greek character. And so I wanted it to feel like a Greek tragedy, like, holy shit, what the hell? And then you throw your book across the room and then you're like, I'm not talking to Cynthia ever again. So that's the kind of writer I want people to be.
See,
I like that.
I respect that. I think I'm a similar type of writer where people get to the end and they're like, really? Like, you didn't even try to give them a happy ending? And I'm like, no, didn't even cross my mind. But I went to school for theater, so I'm a huge Greek tragedy, Shakespearean tragedy is like baked in my blood. So I don't know if I even would know how to write a happy ending. Yeah. And that can be vague. Yeah, I know. I was handed to Allison at the end. Just make this nice for the people at the end.
Yeah,
I can't fix yours. I'm just saying that's how I can end my books. I'm just yours. That's beyond saving.
I know. There's no happiness.
And I understand how that could be challenging for some people. And the things that I tend to read aren't really happy either. And I was originally a journalist. So I was a journalist for a very long time. I worked as a journalist by night, and by day I worked in marketing. And so I have a day job. I work in research, but so that's where a lot of the historical and nonfiction aspects come into my writing. Like Into the Forest is all research. That's all heavy research. And Children of Chicago, there's so much about the city, and the purpose of that was to make the city a character as well. Yeah. And Lauren, she is led by no one other than herself and the city. Her commitment to the city as a person, that's who she's committed to. That she's not committed to her husband, and she's not committed to anybody else except to this city as a person. So.
Well, it's interesting that you say that the city is a person, because sometimes we read characters who make bad choices and then you go, oh, well, then they got what's coming to them. Chicago got what's coming to it as you lay it out as far as its own dark history and where it is now. And I'd never seen the history laid out so beautifully, but tied into the narrative so well that you really went, okay, I see how we ended up here and why this place is the way it is.
And it's such a sad history. And, you know, you can take it back to DuSable, and, you know, he founded this little, you know, area. Well, I mean, there were people here. There were people here that were like massacred and moved out. The Great Chicago Fire, Al Capone. I mean, we kind of joke about, like, we have, you know, mobster tours, but I'm like, they're bullet holes that you can still see in the facades of, like, buildings. And it's like, we think it's cool that we had H.H. Holmes, and I'm like, he murdered like hundreds of women. And so we romanticize them, but then what about our modern day killers? Would we go on a tour through a house where there was a family of 7 recently murdered, which happened recently, you know, maybe 2-3 years ago, in the city? And so I kind of want, and that's also with Into the Forest, I make that argument, like, why is should death be spectacle? And so that is the purpose a lot of Chicago, showing it's, I mean, we had serial killers. We have tons of serial killers here. John Wayne Gacy.
You have a lot of serial killers. There's a lot. And I'm from New England, and our history is, like, you know, checkered and terrible with the Salem witch trials and, like, you know, everything that New England is. But Chicago, you take the cake for, I think, serial killers. The Midwest in general, I think. And no offense to anybody from the Midwest.
There's something
kind of breeds them.
Yeah, there's Ed Gein, John Wayne Gacy, H.H. Holmes, Jeffrey Dahmer. There's something, I can go on with, I mean, the Ripper Crew. There's something to that, because we're such pleasant people. But then there's a strange thing, because if you're a Chicagoan, you're not, like, like, if I'm outside, I'm always ready in a moment's notice that something can turn sideways. And so there's this, and I wanted to do that with Lauren. I wanted to show, like, we have this heightened sense, like, I know I do. I grew up in the inner city. I live here. I could sit here, look out my window, and count the police cars that go by on any given night. And so I wanted to write this character that's very animalistic, that she's a predator and she's a prey as well, or is she prey? You know, so I kind of wanted to play with that, because there's some weird stuff that goes on in Chicago. So.
Yeah. I liked the overlay of the history a lot. I especially, when you started comparing the landscape to haunted forests and castles, the buildings, it's like castles. I really thought that was so beautifully done.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. That's, to me, I mean, I remember being a little girl and, like, getting on the train, and you could see the buildings even from the neighborhoods, and you look out and it feels like a fairy tale. And so you have this very beautiful side of Chicago, these glittering high rises and this gorgeous lake. But then you'll turn the news on, it's like, you know, 13-year-old shot and killed, and you're just like, wait, what? It's so hard to process the two. And so, you know, there's commentary that, you know, I've heard commentary where people are like, Chicago's not really like that. I'm like, well, what zip code do you live in? Do you live in the zip code with mansions, or do you live in, you know, here with us, you know, working class people? And I live in a very working class neighborhood. I'd said 80 or 90% Hispanic. We have a, you know, really, I think 30% are immigrant in my community. And so it's a very beautiful, diverse community, but it still has its challenges with poverty. Many areas of the city do, but then there are areas of the city that essentially feel like gated communities that are very wealthy, that don't have much of the issues that we have to deal with.
Well, and you even addressed that in your book, as far as some of the characters having their families having moved to try to avoid some of this, or change zip codes to get away from that earlier on in the book. And I just thought it was interesting that you're even comparing the dark side of Chicago, but it also has this rich literary history, and you've got a litany in there of all the authors from there. I had no idea. I mean, Mo Willems of Elephant and Piggy fame are from Chicago. I mean, that's the only one my kids will care about, but that was just the last in a long line. that I had no idea there were so many authors out of there. I don't know any other city. Okay, probably somewhere in New England where they've got such a high concentration of just these really talented literary folks.
And I wanted to say that. I wanted to say, you see it on the news and it's a scary place, but I'm like, look at all these amazing people that have come. You know, Ray Bradbury wasn't in the city, but he was in the Chicagoland area, and everybody knows Bradbury and Williams. And so, you know, Sandra Cisneros and the House on Mango Street. It's like all these, like this range of literary talent, art, and artists. And so what is it about this city that it's so beautiful, it's so terrifying, but then and even the people, the regular people in the book, just the everyday people, you know, there was Wilhelmina, who invites Lauren in and have food. And I mean, that's what it's like out here. Like the regular people are so giving things. And I wanted to show that there are lovely people here, and there's some scary people too.
I mean, it was definitely a love letter to Chicago. And the entire time I was reading it, I kept thinking, I want to go back to Chicago. I've only been there twice, and both of the times it was for Wizard World Chicago. And I mainly was just in a hotel room or in a comic convention or eating and drinking. But
yeah, well, that's what we do. I mean, I've traveled quite extensively, and I'm partial to our food. It's a great eating town. If you like food, like this is where you come. You know, we appreciate a good meal. You know, we have our cold, you know, winters and drinking, and it's like I love it here. And like I said, I've traveled a lot, and I just couldn't fit in, I think, anywhere. And maybe it's because of Lauren. Like I have that edge where if I'm, you know, even when I'm on vacation, people will say hi or good morning. I'm like, why? What do you want?
Why?
Yeah, I'm very just trusting. The city has done that to me, and I don't think that can be undone. And again, it's because of, you know, I grew up. Oh my God, I know people who are serving life for murder. I know people who've been murdered. I know kids who've been paralyzed from gang and gun violence. I mean, you know, I used to tutor kids at Cabrini Green. You know Cabrini Green from Candyman. The high rises, that those are gone now. But I used to tutor kids there, and they were like the sweetest kids. And so I've seen the city change over the years. I mean, the 90s were rough. Like we think of Chicago today as a tough town. I'm like, yeah, the 80s and 90s were pretty tough. It was I think it was like 750 murders. I think we had maybe when I was a senior in high school. My high school started off with probably my freshman year. I feel like we started off with like 1,800 or 1,900 students, and 200 of us graduated.
So wow.
It was, and so when I say it was a tough place to grow up, I'm not overreacting. It could be different now. I mean, I'm 40 today. I'm not a teenager, but these are some of the things that I've seen over the years.
Well, I think you did a really great job of not glamorizing the dark side, but paying tribute to it. And I think a lot of maybe that darkness that Chicago has that ran through a lot of the characters in your book, that is some of the beauty of it too. It gives you a way of appreciating life when you see how ephemeral it can be.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it can be gone in a moment. So it teaches you to love it, even love the hard parts of it.
Yeah.
And I saw part of that in Lauren, in your character Lauren. She, you know, she was tough as nails one minute, but like,
right. And I think what's important to remember about Lauren is that she was a little girl at once whose mother went missing. And so what did that do to her psychologically? She wanted the only thing she had, which was her father. She wanted the validation. I want my father to validate me. And so, you know, he gets married again because he's lonely, as he should. And they have a child, him and his wife, and the attention goes elsewhere. And so there is this breakdown in a sense of how do you process somebody else coming into your home, and you're still trying to process the loss of your mother who's been completely, to her, forgotten. And so what does that do? Like, do we fault children who make mistakes? at that young age? I mean, do we fix it? Like, and I made this argument with somebody else, or I posed this point with somebody else. It's like, when someone does something bad, it's usually not like a quick turn, it's a progression. And so people, like with Lauren, people on the outside kind of saw things not so right, but everybody turned a blind eye. And then who pays and who suffers? And I think what does that say about us as the spectator to this individual that's making bad decisions? Like, are we just as bad? And so I make that argument with Lauren. Like, she's dealing with a lot of things and she's still making a lot of mistakes, and she's maybe her allegiance or her alliance to something is in the wrong place. She's never been repaired from that childhood trauma. So who's the bad person? And I really like doing that in fiction, just screwing with people, because it's not always black and white.
Right. And I think it's hard to get out of a cycle of mistakes, even in like real life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm sure you saw this as a journalist, and when you were doing all of your extensive research, like, it's hard to get out of, if you make a terrible mistake in your childhood, if you end up in a youth detention center, like, getting out of that becomes almost impossible.
Right. And so there's the issue of trust. She can't trust anybody. There's the issue of, should we trust her? Like, what is she trying to help?
Well, and I was going to even say, you've got her saddled then with someone who's constantly dredging this up and throwing it in her face. And I could barely tolerate reading him because he just made me so angry. And it wasn't even so much whether or not he was off base, but it was more of just like, I couldn't handle the fact that he was bringing this stuff up, and I would just be like, are you kidding me? This is none of your business. And if you have an issue, go talk to the commander. But if you bring it up again, I'm going to go complain, because this is harassment. I mean, he's basically harassing her through the whole book. And whether he's right or wrong, it's kind of irrelevant to whether he's right or wrong. It's not his business to be harassing her about her past and her family history.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because I was just laughing because Van was loosely based off of a police officer friend that I know.
Oh no, as we're like, I hate him.
It's funny because he is like that. Like, and when I was talking to somebody else on another podcast. It's, a lot of, and I know it's Chicago. There's a lot of cops here. Like, I know it's a cop town, but like, they can't turn it off and on. Like, my cousin, I have cousins who are police officers, and it's like, we're just at a family function, and it's just like, turn it off. Just turn it. You don't have to be, that person. That is who they are. It bleeds through this persona, and is very intimidating. And I remember one time I was at an event, or like was it Christmas dinner or something, and they had invited one of their law enforcement friends, and I couldn't even talk to her for more than 2 minutes. And I asked, what does she do for a living? They're like, oh, that's our interrogator. I was like, well, yes.
Oh my gosh.
And I could feel it, like, within. She was like this 5'2", 90 pound, but
90 pound.
I'm not 90 pound.
But I felt oh my gosh, just her presence felt like a bear over me. And I was like, I felt exactly that. I felt like I was being interrogated, just like, hi, how are you? But they can't.
Do you ever wonder if the reason she got invited to your party is because no one wanted her at theirs?
Probably.
You are no longer welcome to your own family's party.
I know. Like, you're a real drag on Christmas.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Find
So
someplace else to celebrate.
And and so it's, I mean, I wanted to, I did a lot of psychological things. So just people know also, I'm finishing my PhD in psychology, and it's in business psychology, but it's still psychology. And so I do like to do these strange things with my characters as well. Like I said, to present questions of intent and just like motivation. And so I did that a lot with the children. That was that was very hard to do. But again,
I would have read a whole book about those kids.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. They were like creepy Gossip Girl.
Very strange children. Yeah. And so I wanted to kind of show, like, well, when Lauren was young, she kind of screwed up. What would that look like today? And so I just, children don't realize what the long-term consequences are of a death.
Mhm.
Like, I think a lot of people don't realize what is the long-term consequence of losing this one person. It will ripple across generations. And so they were very hard to write. I mean, my favorite character, I think, is, or one of the sweetest characters, I think, is Jordan. I think of him, like him as a character, like he's this great kid, and he is smart, and he knows there's something off, but he just wants to. He lost his friend, and so I just kind of wanted to show this is really sweet kid who's trying to do the right thing, and what happens. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
I
and even-
loved him. Sorry.
Oh, no, I did too. And I was just, the idea of death not being permanent, or not really even understanding the implications of death, especially to somebody young. I really saw that through some of the character interactions, including the idea of, if somebody bothers me, the only answer is to have them killed. Like, there's such a giant leap between, okay, this person, I don't really want them in my life. So, yeah, not have them removed, not have them move away, not have me win the lottery and do something amazing so that I don't have to have this person in my life anymore. It's like, no, they've got to be dead. And that was just, it was so shocking to read, especially because when I was reading, and I won't spoil anything, but certain interactions, it's like, this person's not malicious. This person doesn't wish the other person harm, and yet they end up with basically a death wish on them by the other person, who simply doesn't want to be bothered by them anymore. And I don't think I've ever read something like that, where it seems like something so minor escalates to something so major over nothing.
Right. And so that was really important. And it sounds insane. And that was when we were pitching the book early on, we did get some, I think one of the editors was like, that would never go this way. I was like, we have children that kill children for gym shoes in Chicago. We have, we have people that carjack people, and kill people for and so why do you have to kill if you're going to carjack someone, why do you have to shoot them and then take the car? It's like, so, and then there's also, social media hasn't been the greatest thing for some situations, but there's been a lot of escalations here in the city where kids will bicker online, and then they'll see each other in the street and they'll shoot one person over just some words that were said. And it's like, you shot and killed somebody because of just, they insulted you, or there was this really tragic case where this young man, these two pretty girls were walking down the block, and this young man, teenager, tried to flirt with one of them, and she ignored him, and he shot and killed her. Yeah. This happened here in Chicago, and I'm just like, so that was my way of talking about those cases where it's like, you don't have, it's like, death is so permanent, but that happens here.
But you get, whether it's the society or, a teenager's brain isn't fully capable yet of understanding all the ramifications. But when we're constantly bombarded, and kids especially growing up have been constantly bombarded with violence and video games, and I'm not going to be one of those people that blames those things, but I don't know. It's just weird. Like, you see people coming back from the dead all the time in a video game or in a movie or in a TV show. And you just don't know who you're dealing with and what they've had to deal with before they get imprinted with this material.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, it's tragic. We have, like I said, it's definitely a commentary on children killing children in the city. And it's like, you hear about these cases and it's like, they're so young, and how have we failed them that, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, teenagers turn to that? What is going on? And so,
but I think you did, though. I was just going to say, I think you did with each of the characters who were brought into this kind of lifestyle. We got just these glimpses of, this is what got them there. All of these kids had their own traumas, and none of them started from, I'm a happy person and I just don't like this guy. All of them had their own baggage, either from neglect or abandonment or loss, that all of them, you had so much empathy for them before you started to be fearful of them. And that was an interesting twist you did, because often you usually have a character that you like, and then, okay, maybe you don't like, but having the empathy, and I never lost the empathy, even as I was like, holy crap, what's this kid going to do? I don't like where this is going, but I still felt for them and still hurt for them.
Right. Yeah, and that was similar to, I kind of wanted to mirror like what would have been like with Lauren. She was one of these kids, and she did love her mother, and her mother just literally just like disappeared into thin air one day. And so, you know, like with Mo, you know, his father was attacked at their family store. So you're processing that, almost losing your father. You're processing that you really like this girl and you don't know if she likes you. And so then you kind of get pulled into something that maybe is a little too out of what your expectation of it was. You know, Evie, she's on her own. She's like a kid that her parents, you know, that's the whole conversation of her parents moved her, you know, they work all day. They're working all day to pay and support her. You're not there for her.
Right. So she can have a better life.
Right. That they're not part of.
They're not there. She raises herself.
Dinner's a cereal bar.
Yeah.
It's like, and I know these kids, and you know, I remember when I used to live in our previous house, like, you know, even I would sit outside, like when I would see the gangs outside, because they would literally shoot across the street. And so I would put my jacket on, and my husband's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm gonna go talk to them. And I would just go sit on my front porch and just tell them, come sit with me. Like, you need someone to talk to. What is going on? It's insane. And so, I mean, there were times where they just wanted somebody to sit with, to talk to with them. And so, so just a lot of questions that I posed about child abandonment, loneliness, violence. I mean, sometimes though, I will admit that there is no explaining away a bad person, right?
Yeah.
So is Lauren a product of her life, or was this she was gonna do whatever she was gonna do? I mean, she is I think exactly the type of character I wanted to talk about and express. And while there's this grief and sadness in her, there's this whole unapologetic, I don't care. Like, she will as easily kill someone as she would save someone. And so there's definitely something missing.
Which is definitely scary when the character is a police officer and has that weapon and can therefore be in a position where she has done that and is like, yep, I did that. And there was never any processing for her or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she's also pushing away like the one person who seems to be competent and caring and involved in her life. Sorry, I'm making Jen cry.
I love him too.
The love story. There's definitely a love story going on here that you get glimpses of, and then you see it grow from, oh, okay, she's divorced. Oh, well, okay, you know what? Maybe this isn't as cut and dry as we think. And he's this person who actually does care about her, and she doesn't want to have him with her at this point. And we were talking beforehand going, well, was this because she worries that he'll be next, that he would end up as a casualty too?
Yes. To me, that's always been the unsaid that my husband hated that I did that. My husband's like, why can't she be with him? And so she just, you know, it was not written in the book, but she pushes him away and is so cold to him because she doesn't want him to be the next person. And so I believe that she loves him. But it's like,
I believed that.
We agree.
Yeah.
Canon accepted.
It's canon. They are still very much in love.
It would be great if there's some reality where they fixes this painful thing that she has carrying around with her. And I mean, but you know, just to echo what, you know, Allison said, yes, it is terrifying that there is an officer that is that detached and walking around with a weapon. And so I kind of really wanted to say, this is scary. This is really scary that there's this person that is so cold.
Well, and that gets, you were telling us a little beforehand, we were asking, what are you working on now? Because you are doing more in this like larger universe, but it will not be necessarily featuring exactly the same characters. So can we hope maybe in the future, can we have them possibly get back together if we write fan mail or something?
Well, I don't know, like with all the legal issues she has in front of her. We'll see what's possible.
7 books later. Let's see
7
what
books
you
later.
There'll be a lot
Don't
of
make us
things
write fan fiction.
there'll be a
I'll
lot
do
of
it.
things up to her past. We'll see. I mean, I there's like a quick line as to what is happening to her in the next book. And the next book is again, Chicago is like the main character. It's a different protagonist. You'll like. I will say this: the protagonist is married. They're very much in love. The protagonist and her husband. And then we. Will I say that? No, I'll just say that. But there is a lot.
Yeah, don't say anything else.
No spoiler.
So there is the love. I'm giving people the love that there.
A little bit of love.
Like my husband was really like, I need her in love, and so it's a different character. They're completely madly in love. Like it's just like the grossest married couple that is completely in love.
Oh my gosh.
Does your husband read romance by any chance? Is that what he's like? Where's my happily ever after?
He loves like he's not a horror person. He loves fantasy. He loves like romance films. He's just like so gushy all the time, and so he's
that's
like
so sweet.
That is so cute.
I'm kind of lucky because he's very like he likes, and we both do it. Like I'm a sucker for a great love story. But I write sad things. But I really wanted to write just a married couple that just like love each other so much, and there is no conflict, and there is just like this perfect union, and then they support one another. One of them is a detective investigating our next monsters. So that's what I will say. So it's a new monster, married couple in Chicago, and
Chicago.
And there's a lot of history in the next book as well, and a completely different line of or emphasis of Chicago history. So this kind of focused more on the building of the city and the people it made, like artistic folks. But the next book's a little. I hope people like it. So
I'm sure people will. So very quick before we end, do you have a favorite fairy tale?
I love Hansel and Gretel.
Oh.
I love Hansel and Gretel. I love the little boy, the little brother, and the little sister, and little sister like saving each other. And I think so. This is another sad one, right? So you have the little boy and little girl who are abandoned by their parents. So sad. And one of them is a stepmother, and they're wandering through the forest, and they find the witch's house, and the witch tries to eat them, but I love that they save each other. That gives me so much joy. So that's my favorite.
I love that. I love that. Cynthia, you've been fantastic. Thank you for talking to us about your depressing, twisted story, which I love so much.
The next one would be very, very sad too. Sorry.
Good.
But they're in love.
Can we
just at least take that?
There's I think that's going to be the theme of Children of Chicago was trust. Who can you trust? And the theme of the next one is definitely what you will do for love.
Oh, love it. Love it. So we cannot wait. You'll have to come back when that comes out. And again, congratulations on the award nominations for Into the Woods and All the Way Through. That book knocked my socks off.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not an easy read, but it's almost, yes, cheers. Cheers. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Have our cocktails. You have such a pretty glass there. I have my can.
That's okay.
Somebody had to buy me a pretty glass because I've been drinking out of a juice glass my whole life. And literally somebody that I know kept seeing me drinking out of a juice glass on the show, and they bought us very nice whiskey glasses.
You were embarrassing them in public, Jen.
I feel like they were you are a grown-up now.
No jelly jar.
No jelly jar. So thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Allison. Next week, join us live at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern, where we will be talking with Nikki Chen. and her debut novel. Thank you to everybody at the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. Thank you to our executive producer, Pam Stack, our producer, Roman Sorotin. And this has been a copywritten podcast by the Global Authors on the Air Network, and we will see you all next week. Waving.